Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller. Today I'm joined by an awesome progressive former House candidate, one of the first class of the Justice Democrats, now I guess executive director of Future Generations, Roza Calderon. How you doing, Rosa?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me. You were, like I said, you were part of that first class of Justice Democrat, kind of like X-Men first class, right? You were there at the beginning. And Cori Bush just won after her second run. Like, what's that feel like? I know she's a good friend of yours. What's that like for you to see?
It was amazing. We actually had a get together with Brand New Congress and all the volunteers that are helping with them. And so I just jumped on to their viewing party, and it was just tears, just nonstop tears from the moment that we saw those numbers come up to probably an hour or two after that. We just couldn't stop. We were so elated. We were so happy. Nobody is more deserving than Cori Bush to have won that.
Right on. Yeah, there's that quote in Knock Down a House that always rings in my head that AOC said, for one of us to get in, 100 of us have to run, right? So,
yeah.
I'm sure that rings deep for you. You ran in California's 4th district in 2018. And before we get into Future Generations PAC, and you got an awesome slate with a couple elections coming up, Ed Markey, Paula Jean Swearengin, we'll hit on a lot of those. What were some of the biggest takeaways for you in your House run? What did you learn?
So for me in my House run, there was a lot of things that I didn't know. Number one, as when you're a regular person, you have no idea how politics do work. And you are not very aware that nobody's going to welcome you with open arms, especially when you are putting off big corporate money. You don't want to have anything to do with corporate candidates or even representatives refusing some endorsements from PACs themselves or from candidates themselves. And when you come in with that kind of voice, just expressing yourself as somebody who's here for the people only, you're not welcome with open arms. So that was one of the hardest things to realize. Also, my district itself was very, very conservative. I would say that even the Democrats there are fairly conservative themselves. So coming from the populist movement with Bernie Sanders, it was just not something that was going to be an easy battle. But I knew that the conversation that must have been had was that important that we actually just needed to run. And I think that we won the conversation. I mean, we had AOC who came out of Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats that came out as the winner, but the winners were all of us, because every single race that was ran, we changed the dialogue in American culture about what politics means and who we are as citizens and what our role is in this democracy.
Yeah, here. Couldn't agree more. And thanks for running. That was amazing. Very inspiring, and inspires the next wave, and it just perpetuates from there. Can I dive into one of the things you just said there about, just because that's not something that people have a lot of eyes on, about PACs reaching out to a new candidate. Can you describe that? Like you're getting into a race, you're principled, right? I'm sure a lot of candidates are in the beginning, and then they get that call, they get that email, and they get a dollar amount with an endorsement. Just describe that. I mean, what's that like to experience that firsthand?
Well, for me, the first experience was with APEC, and it was something that I had already told the people that I had hired on initially that I did not want to go with PACs, but they were very part of the Democratic Party. So they still set up this meeting. Essentially, when they brought up the idea that they would like me to take this tour and that they would like me to kind of sign off on their platform, I just couldn't do it, mostly because I've always been somebody who believes in the rights of the Palestinian people, and lobbying in the U.S. has not been done for them on their side, and they just do not have equal negotiating power, which I think as humans we should, and as representatives we should advocate for that as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've never experienced that firsthand, so I wonder, APAC is particularly egregious and known for that, approaching young candidates with a kind of a check and a platform and a tour, like you said. It's not hard to see how that can be tempting if you're struggling and you look at the platform, and if you're if you're not running for the right reasons, like you indicated about Palestinian rights, it would be easy to be swayed. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I like to get that out there for new candidates that's coming. Be prepared for that, right? And I'm sure that was the first of many, right?
Yeah, it was the first of many. But at some point, it did stop once I started being more vocal and appearing on TYT and getting the right endorsements from Justice Democrats. It was very clear that it was just a closed door, which worked in our favor and against us as well. It became more of, we have to be absolutely people funded. We didn't have the kind of money to run an operation with staff. So everybody who was helping was volunteers. We had over 300 volunteers. We had basically, I would consider them like 10 campaign managers that just kind of shifted between the times that they were off of work to help out. And that's how we did it. We were outraced like 1 to 10, but our votes cost us like less than $1, while my opponent's votes cost them like $200 to $100. But that's kind of what we're looking for now. Like one of the big things is that I was the only one that was a local for the district. I knew the issues of the district. I'm going to be there fighting for my district, regardless with whether I win or lose. And both my opponents have kind of just disappeared. So that's what kind of happens with carpetbaggers who come in, who are district shopping, and who also have this corporate backing behind them. And that's what we want to prevent in the future. So any advice that I give candidates right now is just to be themselves, be as true to themselves as they can be, and make it very clear what their values are and how they will not be swayed, not before their election and absolutely never once they're in office.
Awesome. Yeah, and like I said, that resonates into subsequent races. Like Marquita Bradshaw just was outspent. I don't know what the number is. It's like 50 to 1 or 100 to 1 or some insane number, right? So, it's about the policy and
yeah.
So how did that lead in?
Yeah, it's crazy.
No, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask how that led into Future Generations and what's the mission statement there?
So with Future Generations, it was a PAC that was created in Seattle by young activists and organizers. I was not one of the founders myself, but they did reach out to me through my activism and asked me if I would help them launch their first candidate. And I did. We were able to kind of get the branding done, the website done, make the announcement. And once that was completed, they asked me if I would join its overall and help guide them through the process of electing candidates in Washington. And now we're actually a national PAC, so we're helping first-time candidates. Our goal is going to be to recruit, train, and give that first seed money to first-time candidates. The other is for candidates like Marquita or myself who didn't have that enormous support with part of a staff. We create a nationwide network for them. So at any given weekend, we can multiply their 10 volunteers to 40, 50, 100 volunteers to phone bank and text bank for them.
That's great. Yeah, there's a few organizations doing similar, like kind of lessons learned, like Nabil Islam just started a similar one. TYT just started that Be the Rebellion thing, right? It's about, getting to progressives early, right? Because that early money, that early activism can really make a huge difference, especially building name recognition for a new candidate. So how do you have an incumbent, you're backing Ed Markey, but how do you identify races or candidates that Future Generation wants to get behind, throw their weight behind?
So Ed Markey is definitely the only sitting person that we have on our slate. And besides, growing the progressive movement, we want to also retain those really important seats. And knowing that Senator Markey, who was a co-author for the Green New Deal, is being targeted by special interests. And now we have somebody like Joe Kennedy III, who really doesn't have a reason to challenge him except for perhaps just status gain. That's definitely a seat that we want to defend, and we want to make sure that the Green New Deal doesn't die in the Senate because he's gone. That we have somebody there who's going to be fighting for us, for the youth. And the PAC itself, one of the things that we started out with was making sure that we gave a voice to Indigenous communities, especially environmental issues, But when we look at those two things, nothing is separate from the other, right? So poverty, racial issues, healthcare justice, all of those things are so interconnected that we want to make sure that we get champions for all of those issues, not just based on one tiny litmus test. We want to make sure that this person's going to continue batting for every single progressive value that we have.
Right on. And you do have the slate on your website. I'm going to pull it up here. It's futuregenerations.earth is the website, which is a badass name, by the way. So let me see if I can share this here and get rid of this little nonsense. So I'm just going to kind of scroll down. We don't have to go like a deep dive on each of them, but Ed Markey, we already talked about. Obviously, just having the name Kennedy is not a credential, doesn't make you whatever. But yeah, and that his election is the next one up. So that's September 1st, right? So
September 1st, yeah.
Okay, and you have on your website here, you have mechanisms to volunteer, and you have volunteers that are phone banking, sending texts for candidates kind of as they come up on the slate. Is that right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Right on. Yes. So if anyone wants to get involved and help on that campaign, go to futuregenerations.earth and help buttress Ed Markey's race, because it's a critical one. Let's talk a little bit about Al Gross. You mentioned him before we kind of went live. I'm not too familiar with his campaign. He's in Alaska. Tell me about Al Gross.
So Dr. Al Gross is our candidate in Alaska. He's an independent, and we truly do believe that you can be of any party and subscribe to the 7 generation principles of fighting for legislation with 7 generations in mind. And Dr. Al Gross is definitely one of those persons. He is an Alaska native, and he has been there fighting for the community as long as basically he's been alive. And he is trying to challenge Sullivan, who is from Ohio. So he's one of those Republicans, those candidates that shop for districts and end up going and traveling and finding like the cheapest place where they can run. And this was one of them. There is a misconception about Alaska where people think that it's just a red district. But I think that's one of the things that Dr. Al Gross does offer. The independent pool in Alaska is the largest. It actually outnumbers Republicans and Democrats combined. And he does bring something that is absolutely needed today, which is a separation between the two-party system. He does give people a breath of fresh air. He is a Green New Deal candidate. He is also a doctor. And in this age of COVID, I think that we need somebody in the Senate who's going to be fighting for and actually knows what they're fighting for when they're talking about healthcare and especially in pandemics like this. So this is somebody that we are putting our trust behind. We are very confident that we will win this general. This seat was only lost by 6,000 votes last time. But this time we are doing all the groundwork. We have everybody down there. We have 2 programs running with the Friends and Family to make sure that we get out the vote. And because we're youth organized and youth founded, most of the focus that we're doing is youth-based. We also have an enormous Indigenous community vote campaign, so that will definitely make the difference. He is somebody that is fighting for, like I said, the Green New Deal, but also for the salmon runs, something that is very important in Alaska.
Amazing. Yeah, you mentioned the 7 generations component of it. I'm just going to scroll down. You have Karina Miller. I think I have her coming up on the show. There's a lot of Native rights, First Nation rights. That's part of your platform, which I think is incredible. So some of these others, Cori Bush obviously just won. Thank you very much for helping do that. Paula Jean Swearengin running again to take over Joe Manchin's seat. Can you talk about that race?
Yes. So she's not taking on Joe Manchin's seat. Well, she did go for it last time, but now she's actually challenging a Capiata who's a Republican. And we are really confident that I think that this time we can really do it. Paula Jean is just somebody who is very authentic, knows the community. She is the daughter of a coal miner, and her message is clear. Like she is fighting for the people. She wants to bring prosperity to her region, to her state. And I just love her so much. She was also one of the brand new Congress candidates and Justice Democrat candidates. And she's just one of those people that inspires you because she speaks from the heart. And she definitely doesn't take, I guess, crap from BS from anybody, you know? So I think that's one of the things that I admire the most about her. She is just somebody that we're going to be mobilizing for quite a bit, actually, here in the next month or so. As soon as we are done with the primary with Al, which is next Tuesday, we're going to be going just full force for Senator Markey. And then after that, we will be, I guess, deploying our volunteers to all these other races. And Paula Jean is one that we believe that if we get all the progressive organizations out there and truly putting their backing behind her, that she will actually make it through and will be in the Senate. Yeah,
that would be a huge pickup. She again, she was in. People might know her from Knock Down the House. She had that legendary line about, if a foreign country came in and destroyed our mountains in this way, we would go to war, right? So she's on those front lines in West Virginia, and she squeaked through the primary. There was a three-way, right, with Richard Ojeda, and she managed to win that. That was a hard-fought primary, so well earned, right? So. Yeah. Beth Dolio just moved on to a runoff. So this is an interesting one too, because she's in Washington 10, right? And she made it to a runoff, and it's one of those things where it's Democrat versus Democrat, right? So safe seat for people to vote for the more progressive candidate. Can you talk about her race? Did I lose you?
No, I can still hear you. I just missed one part that you said. But yeah, so in Washington, it's a top 2 state. And Beth did win. She did get through her primary, but she did get less votes than the person who won, who is somebody that we are not supporting, mostly because she does not respect the tribal treaty rights. And it is a corporate candidate. Beth, on the other hand, is a Green New Deal candidate who does value the Indigenous community in her area, and will be a voice for them in Congress. And that is a seat that, as soon as we got the numbers, we have been working diligently to make sure that we get her across the finish line in November, so that she essentially will be a winner in that runoff, which is the general.
Yeah. So that's November 3rd. Also endorsed by Bernie Sanders. So
correct. Yes.
And Mike Siegel, I had him on the show. He's awesome. Texas 10, I think. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't have to go through each of these, but any you obviously probably want to talk about all of them, but which
I do.
which one? Let's hit on them maybe briefly. These, Karina and Lorenzo and.
Yeah, so Karina's off to the general, and we're trying to help her out to make sure that she is able to win that seat. She has a Republican on the other side. Jasmine Crockett that you see there, and Lorenzo. So we came into Texas, and that's one of the places that we are really working hard in flipping. Just not just the House of Congress, but also the House seats within Texas. And Lorenzo and Jasmine were introduced to us by the local Sunrise Movement group. We kind of jumped into the race a little bit later, but we were able to make a difference by contacting over 40,000 voters last minute. And Lorenzo actually won by 200 votes, and Jasmine, unseated an incumbent, by 90 votes. So she's actually basically in the House already. So that was huge. Lorenzo's opponent started saying that we were dark money, but we really are not. We're just funded by the people. We have very little money. So if you guys actually want to pitch in, I'm going to do that plug. Donate, please.
There you go. Giant red button right here on the top right.
Giant red button up there. So go and donate whatever you can. We use every single penny as effectively as we can. We are ran by volunteers. We've been working on this nonstop, and like I said, we're going to make sure that all these candidates get through. Charlotte Minna, who's just below them, she is still waiting for results in Washington from her primary, but she's only I think 100 votes behind. So She was also endorsed by Bernie Sanders last minute. She has the progressive movement behind her. She's an amazing candidate. and we would love to see her in the House for Washington, legislating for progressive issues.
Here, here. And some of the previous ones, Andrew Romanoff, Charles Booker. So some pretty high profile races there, and some gutting losses, I should say. So go to futuregenerations.earth. Donate first and foremost. Throw $5, $10, $100, whatever.
We're doing $7 for 7 generations into the future. So whatever you can, completely welcome.
That's awesome. Can you expound on that, the origins of that phrase, that 7 generations premise, for those that don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Indigenous communities, I'm not Indigenous for North America, but I am from Central America, Pipil Mayans, and it's an old tradition that common people believe that everything that we do today should be done with 7 generations in our minds, and how it's going to impact their lives in the future. And that's something that we want to bring on. And usually this premise has been used for environmental issues. So preservation or conservation, whichever it may be. But now we want to also make sure that we implement it into economic policy, racial equality policy, healthcare policy. So Medicare for all is extremely important for us. And that's one of the things that we look for in our candidates as well, not just be Green New Deal, but also be a Medicare for all candidates, somebody who supports the Black Lives Matter movement, because that's something that it's at the forefront right now. It's something that is being dismissed as just something as Black Lives Matter only, but really is a movement of Black Lives Matter too. And none of us are going to be living in a just America until that is completely understood. So that's kind of where that principle comes from. And that's how we measure our candidates to see if they can also be future generation candidates.
Right on. Yeah, I love it. And that's amazing. So after November, you said you're going to start identifying more candidates, recruiting candidates. Is it too early to start talking about that process? Is there a way that people can submit, get in touch? Obviously we've discussed the platform. It's pretty cut and dry. Do you have a pledge? Like, how can people get nominated or get involved as a potential future generations candidate?
Yeah, absolutely. So because we're not just focused on the Congress or in federal races at all, we are helping candidates all the way from city council, board positions, judge positions, all the way to like the Senate. So if you are thinking of running for city council, or there may be an open election coming up that you think that you are the candidate for, and you don't need anybody else telling you that you are the candidate, you can go directly to our website and click on nominate, and you can nominate yourself, or you can have somebody else nominate you. What we do once we get the nomination, is we'll reach out to you and discuss the position that you're running for. We'll look at some data metrics, and if that's definitely a seat that we are going to put our full weight behind, and then we go from there. So at the very least, you get to be one of our future generations candidate seals of approval, which means that you are definitely somebody that progressives should be supporting. But go online and just click on nominate.
Right on. Cool. So again, futuregenerations.earth. Go there, volunteer, donate $7, but you're going to donate more than $7. Donate $70, right? Come on.
Nobody's going out. You have some savings.
Right? Come on. Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. You're saving money by not going to restaurants, not going to movies or concerts. Just donate it to a good cause like Future Generations, and, help flip some of these seats or reclaim them for the people, Awesome. Anything else that you want to hit on? I think what you're doing is amazing. And like I said, thank you for running. And, I say this to everyone that kind of ran once and then stayed in the fight. Like, I imagine, not winning a race has got to be, it's got to suck, right? And to stay in the fight, is a choice to persist, right? So I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, for anybody who's ran a race and lost this election cycle, just stay with it, because there is change that we can do on the ground, and it doesn't have to be in the halls of Congress or in any elected position. So we just got to keep the pressure up, and that's not going to happen if you just go home. Right
on. Yeah. Any, I'm not going to ask directly, but any chance that you would Would you be opposed to ever running again for another office?
I am not opposed to it. I did want to take a little bit of a mind break. And also I wanted to see what the redistricting looks like in California. Because right now that district is just way too red and McClintock has a strong hold on it.
Yeah, that's rough. All right, Rosa. Well, thank you for taking some time to chat with me about your slate. I look forward to the next slate. I'll have you back on. Let's talk about it. Let's keep it going. Anything I can do to spread the word, I'm all in. So I think what you do is amazing. So keep up the good fights.
Thank you so much for inviting us over.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.